Welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Hinton.
And I'm Frederick Philip Von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do.
And do tech good.
Light as a feather, stiff as a board. I think that's from the Craft movie. We're going to be talking about that later. Hey guys, just a quick before we get into the show, if you like the show, love the show, as I always say, find Brian Hinton aggressively adorable, please go to iTunes and give us a little review, kick a few stars our way, just make it rain stars. Go to YouTube, subscribe. We would honestly and sincerely appreciate it. So with that being said, and without any further ado, we have a packed show for you today. We have four guests on the show, something like that. And we're going to be talking about craft. We're going to be talking about Pixel and Tonic. And we're going to go ahead and introduce our guests. We have an additional guest, and I'll get to him too. We have the Director of Marketing at Craft CMS, Leah Stephenson. Director of Technical Services at Pixel and Tonic, Sam Hernandez. We have Chief Customer Officer at Pixel and Tonic, Leslie Camacho, and we have
Brandon Kelly.
And Brandon, what do you do?
I run the place.
And Brandon just runs the place.
I feel like it's the Brady Bunch going on.
That's Brandon's table. What? Like a baller, because he's the boss. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure, honestly. Hey, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about where you guys are at first, and we'll start to get to know you. I know you all in your office are at Oregon, in Bend, Oregon. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
Yep, yeah, we're in Bend, Oregon. It's almost exactly in the middle of the state.
Nice. And Sam, you're in Austin, Texas, correct?
Austin, Texas, and up north.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. How come you're not making the move over to Oregon? It's beautiful over there.
Oh, that's happening. Trust me.
Especially after the weather today. You said it was 106 there today?
Yeah, something like that. Something crazy.
Yeah, man, it's we're in Florida in Sarasota and St. Pete, and I think it's like 95 today, and it's just been brutal, super hot. What is it like in Oregon right now?
I think it's 87. Yeah.
Yeah, but your evenings are like super cool, right? Aren't you in the 60s in the evening?
Yeah, it cools down at night.
It's pretty nice. We can't lie. This is a great place to live.
It's also dry heat, so 87, but I think it's like 6% humidity right now versus whatever you're at, 300% over in Florida, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 300 or 500%, somewhere around there. Either way, it feels like the gates of Hades. It's pretty warm. So do you mind if we just kind of start off about what you guys do? If we've met you, and could you just kind of say, hey, I'm so-and-so, this is my title, and this is what I do at Pixel and Tonic and/or Craft?
Yeah. So, again, I'm Leah Stephenson. I'm the Director of Marketing for both Pixel and Tonic and Craft CMS. And these days, I spend most of my time organizing .all, the official Craft Developers Conference. It's our second annual conference, which we're super excited about. This year, we're taking it to Berlin, Germany, September 26th through 28th. And we've extended it an extra day. So it's a 3-day event, 2 days of speakers, 1 day of workshops. And it's just a great opportunity for the craft community to get together and meet each other in person and learn lots of great stuff. So that's been a lot of what I do lately. And in addition to that, I'm leading up the whole new craftcms.com, which will be launching in fall. So some pretty exciting things we have coming up here.
Nice.
I'm Leslie Camacho. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here. My day-to-day varies quite a bit, but most of the time I'm helping customers in some way, shape, or form, or I'm dealing with all the non-developer and non-marketing things that could. I'm the spreadsheet and legal guy, HR person, in addition to running the partner network and partner program, sales and answering answering a lot of emails and taking a lot of calls. Basically, I talk to people all day, in one form or another.
You are the people person.
Yes. Yeah.
Samuel.
Oh, should I go?
Yeah, go for it, Sam.
Oh,
Oh, you're last, Sam. Come on.
I know. I'm used to being last. No, my title is a director of technical services, but what I've been working on is a cross between. I'm a developer as well. I've had years of agency work. Actually, I'm the newest member of Pixel and Tonic. I've been a huge fan of this team for a long time, so I'm thrilled to be on board. Started in January, so I do some of the website stuff, like for .all, and have been working on some features for Craft ID most recently. Some support too.
Yeah, a little.
A little bit of everything.
But what I want to know is where the Pixel and Tonic name came from. Was it a cocktail lover in the mix?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, so it was a domain that was available. Was the main thing.
Best way to name a company, yeah.
I liked gin and tonics, and that was about the extent of the thought that went into it. It started off just me as like a way to kind of formalize a expression engine add-on business I had going on previously under my own name, and I wanted to make that a little bit more legit. So I was looking for random names and settled on Pixel and Tonic once I found that.
Right on.
So why the lemon? I guess is it just to go along with the drink.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of put it in the drink.
It was either going to be flower, lemon, and yellow is a nicer looking color than green.
I like that. All right, fair enough. So, what's the story? How did you put this company together?
It all kind of just happened. Like, it started off as just me. I already had a previous business under my own name that I'd been doing on the side. I had gotten to a point where I was making enough money on the side to go it alone and decided to do that. And then about 2 months later, I hired Brad Bell, who's still with us. He's our CTO. He's not in the room right now, but he's over there. And together, after about a year, we started working on Craft and built that out. And when we started working on that, we needed someone to cover the expression engine add-on business. So we hired Andres to do that. And, everything kind of just one after another. There were distinct needs, and thankfully revenue kept going up in a way where we could afford to keep adding people.
That's great. Okay, great. So how long did that take to expand that business?
So I officially, first day on the job was January 1st, 2010. So it's been, almost 9 years at this point. It's been basically like a very slow growth. There was never like a point where we added more than one person in any given like 6 or 12 month stretch.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so when did you start to find out that you've defined what you believe was success? Like this building is going, or this business is going somewhere. We have something. We're developing on a regular. We have clients. What did that look like?
Yeah, so for this, it was a little weird because on day one we were successful. Like I had an existing revenue stream, and all I was doing was giving it a new name and going all in on it rather than letting it be side income. I think that like this phase of Pixel and Tonic, where we have Craft CMS, and like the first day that I felt like Craft was successful was, I think the first month that we made enough money from Craft to cover both Brad and my salary. Up until that point, like things were pretty rocky because it turns out, when your existing business is all about creating software for one CMS, and then you announce a competing CMS, the former ecosystem tries to find alternatives at that point because they see the writing on the wall. And so our revenue kind of skydove around that time when we announced Craft. And so that was kind of a rough patch where we weren't sure if we were going to get Craft to a point where it'd start paying the bills, or if we were just going to throw in the towel or find some funding or anything like that. And We did have to take on some consulting work for a little bit just to make payroll and keep cash flow positive. And so it was like the first month where Brad and I were both covered and we could both pay ourselves just from the money that came in from Craft that month. That was definitely like the moment where it's like, all right, this actually is going to work.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
What year was that?
It was super stressful. What was that?
What year was that?
That was, so we launched 1.0 in 2013. In like June, and I want to say that first month was that December, or maybe the following January. So either December 2013 or January 2014, one of those two. So it ended up taking about maybe 7 or 8 months.
That's pretty good.
So let's talk about the genesis of Craft before we dive into that. What was the pain point that you were trying to alleviate? How did this come to be?
So the add-ons that we were building for Expression Engine at the time were really pushing Expression Engine in a direction that like it didn't want to go and wasn't easy to push it that way. And kind of creating this, I think, this momentum around the product and people trying to use it in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended, or to a degree of flexibility that was beyond what it really should have been used for. And so a lot of the initial inspiration just came from like wanting to build plugins that took it in a direction that like ultimately we had to throw the towel and say, like, we literally can't do this. It's too complicated on this system. And yet, we wanted to tackle that problem still. And it was like, well, if we're going to do it, we just have to write the CMS ourselves. And eventually there were enough of those things piling up where, we started connecting some dots and coming up with architectures and realizing, hey, if we did things this way, that's why, like, this might actually work. And we did have a pretty good name in that community. And so we thought, like, maybe we've got enough of a built-in customer base where we could launch and not be completely unknown. And then the other side of it was just like, the revenue from the add-on sales was starting to decline, and we needed to do something besides that current business. Like, we needed to figure out what the next thing was, and we did have another false start before this that would have been a much more long game and probably ended up requiring us to go down the funding route and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, like, we already knew that we could do a good CMS. We had all the ideas for it, and so we just decided to go for that instead.
You didn't want to bring it on Shark Tank, see what you could do?
Yeah, not the Shark Tank type, I don't think.
Was there ever a point that you were like, oh, maybe this is a bad idea, let's back up, let's backtrack, and if there was, what did you do to maybe overcome that?
There were a number of times where my people around me, my close friends and wife, were telling me it was a very bad idea.
Your wife was telling you that.
And I think there were times where I probably would have been wise to listen to them. But I'm extremely stubborn, and that's all it comes down to. Like, I just ignored everyone. I was like, I know this could work. It might take a year or two, but like, I know we can do this. And so there were a lot of months where it was like 80, 90-hour weeks and just like working around the clock and stressing about money and but ultimately we got out of it.
Well, good for you. That's what it takes if you have that commitment. I mean, if Andy Bernard didn't stop singing, he would never got that job at Cornell. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Very similar.
The secret to success then is just plain old stubbornness. So that's what you're saying.
That's mine. I'm sure I do things the hard way, but that was mine.
Well, good. Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes to push through. So
yeah. So what exactly is Craft? Like someone who they hear someone like whispering Craft CMS, and they're like, what is that? Like, what would you tell them it is?
It's a website.
In five words.
5 words.
It's the best way. It's the best CMS platform to build a bespoke site, especially for small to medium-sized businesses. Like, there's this space where Shopify and WordPress ends, but you don't need enterprise or anything close to it. And that's kind of where Craft sits in that big middle ground space. So the more customized your design feature experience needs to be, and the more I would say you're working with professionals, because that's the other thing that separates Craft out, is we make it for web pros. Then the better Craft is going to be for that project.
Yeah, it's the content management system that both developers and designers love building in, because it doesn't make any assumptions about what you're building. And at the same time, content authors really enjoy using. It has a very beautiful, streamlined user interface. So it's really a tool that makes everyone who has to interact with it happy.
To kind of complement Leslie's point, like I think like the main thing is like developmentally, it's basically a hybrid. Most CMSs lean very heavily toward content entry, or they're more of like Drupal is on the other hand extreme of like very developer focused. And I think Craft is kind of this hybrid approach where it's like it's got this awesome CMS feature set built in, but it's also got this awesome developer platform built in. And so if you need to extend it beyond what it can do out of the box, like there's no limits. There's never any limits. So people build simple websites with it all the way up to extremely complicated applications with it. And like all the while, they're never fighting with the system. It's just you interact with it a little bit differently. You start interacting with it as a platform that has CMS features at some point.
Yeah, I like that it's kind of an in-between of a WordPress and a Drupal. Like it sits somewhere in the middle there. Like you definitely, like with a Drupal, sorry, was somebody saying? I thought I heard something. With Drupal, you definitely could get as complicated as you want. But with WordPress, everything is very simple, and all those things are there for you, and you don't have to get out of that box. But I've seen people go crazy on WordPress and do things that just make no sense, and they have this big giant mess at the end of the day. So this is a great kind of amalgamation of the two, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're always hesitant to directly compare ourselves to WordPress in terms of what you can do, because you can do anything with anything. Like it's all PHP applications, and like people can stretch anything and contort it in different ways and come up with the same result regardless of the starting point. But yeah, like I think if you kind of think of it as like somewhere in between those in terms of ease of use borrowed from WordPress, but potential for complexity capabilities on Drupal's end, and then you mix in something like Laravel as well. So there's also this development platform aspect. That's kind of where it sits, kind of in the middle of all three of those.
Yeah, I would say it's about what it's made for and who it's made for. So WordPress is not made for professionals. So a lot of professionals use WordPress, and they can do amazing things with WordPress, but WordPress at the end of the day is not made for a back-end developer who really wants to do some amazing stuff with it. And enterprise system is made for security people and audit trails and all that stuff. And Craft is made for, I don't know, it sounds like sales speak to say like creative professionals, but it's also accurate. Like we build it for people who make stuff and for the people that actually use it. That's kind of Craft's secret sauce, is that it's actually fun to get in and use it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love your kind of your pricing points too, where you were talking about the creative and the professionals. You have the solo, and then you have the pro, which is, the solo is I'm going to make a website for me, but it's like you said, a creative professional kind of thing. I'm making a website for maybe my small business, or maybe just my persona, or a podcast, whatever. But then you could also, if I'm building something for my small mom and pop shop, you could take it down that way too.
Yeah.
And the price is great.
If you're doing something professionally as an agency for a client kind of thing, then you're usually going to go with the pro version and pay us a $2.99 licensing fee, and anything else it's free for you to use, regardless.
Yeah, our primary customers are creative agencies and and development shops who are building websites for their clients. So that is kind of where that price point sits as well. Solo's awesome if you're a freelancer starting out trying to build your own site, or you have a side project that you need to build a site for. And then Pro really speaks to that agency that's doing client work.
So how easy is it to install? Like some of these things, like a Drupal is dead simple, or rather a WordPress is dead simple, where somewhere like a Drupal, it's not a traditional CMS. It doesn't come out of the box. You have to install all the things that you want it to do. So where is the starting point on this?
It's much closer to WordPress. If you want, it can be exactly as simple as WordPress, where you go to the website and you download a zip, set up a database, enter your database credentials, and then you're done. Click an install button, and it loads itself up. There are like more complicated ways to do it because a lot of our customers like to make things more complicated. So I don't know if you're familiar with Composer, but it's basically a PHP package manager, kind of like NPM for JavaScript. And so you could do that. You could install it with that and make it just a dependency of your project if you want, and you can go off in that direction further. But if you want it to be, if you're coming from WordPress, you won't be thrown for any loops. It's pretty simple.
So we keep mentioning WordPress and Drupal. Does sound like you guys have a friendly competition going on. Do you guys do the? I hope you guys do this, and if not, you should send them a cake. Do the cake thing like Mozilla and Internet Explorer.
Send them cake. Is that what you mean?
The cake? Yeah, cake for their anniversary. Year. You should send it to Automatic. That would be great. I love
Automatic Office. Where are you going to send it? They just got rid of their only office they ever had.
Directly to Matt.
I guess. Yeah. I'm sure he'll be happy to tell us his address.
I'm sure you can find it on a blog somewhere, on a WordPress blog.
So are you all? You talked about them being remote. How remote is your team? And obviously we have Sam here, who's in Austin. But do you have any other people around the world? And what's that?
We're 50-50 right now. There's 4 of us in the Bend office. And then we have Sam in Austin. We have Andres in Riga, Latvia. We have Ben in Chamonix, Grenoble, France. And then Luke Holder, who's our commerce developer, he's in Perth, Australia. So we really are all over the world.
So did you all start in Bend, or did you locate there?
No, I don't think that any of the international people. I'm sorry, you're just asking about us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Brad and I started in the Bay Area. We used to work at an agency in San Jose, California, and then we both kind of moved our separate ways, but stayed in that general region. And then my wife and I were ready to get out of there, and we visited Leslie, who we were friends with. And just totally fell in love with Bend. So we were here a month later.
I'm the Bend evangelist. I've been here almost 11 years now. And when people say they want to move and they're not looking for a big city, I try to get them to Bend.
Really? I know we're kind of talking about Craft, but I'm curious about Bend now that you've talked about.
Brian and I both have an affinity for the cold, wet weather. So we just basically want to know how cool it is and when could we go there.
It's a recreational wonderland. We're located, like Leslie mentioned, right in the middle of the state. So we don't get the rain that Portland gets. We are buffered by the Cascades, so we get snow in the winter, but we don't get the rain. And
it does rain beer here, though.
It does.
Yes, it's the most microbreweries per capita, I think, in the United States right now.
Wow!
Lots of microbrewed coffee, lots of distilleries, lots of wineries. It's called Bend because it's built into the bend of the Deschutes River. So there's a beautiful river, like a couple blocks right over there.
Oh.
Hundreds of people float on it. It's at the foot of Mount Bachelor, so they're skiing, snowboarding. Like Leah's husband's like a professional snowboarder and
Awesome.
does some awesome stuff. If you like jeeping, basically anything you want to do outdoors, it's 5 minutes from here. Any time of year.
Are there coffee shops and the like there? Wow.
Yeah,
A lot.
there's really good
Yeah.
coffee there. Yeah.
Yeah, our last guest moved from Orlando to somewhere in Oklahoma, and she was commenting on how she does coffee shops.
No lack of coffee shops.
No.
So now I'm wondering if it was actually craft, because I was thinking it was craft because you're crafting your website. Is it craft for craft beer?
No, the Ben part came second. So
Okay.
but I will as well. So it was actually a little bit of both. Like it started off with being called Blocks, just because I always liked that name. Like back 10 years ago, I had this idea for a CMS, and it was all based on basically a precursor to what became our matrix field in Craft CMS. And I wanted the whole CMS built around this Lego component block type concept. And so I wanted it to be called Blocks. And that name kind of stuck when we were actually working on this thing. But then sometime during the beta, started realizing like it didn't really seem like the right name. And if we were ever going to change it, like before 1.0 would be the best time to do it.
Yeah, generally.
You know, and it's really like we're trying to go after people that want to craft their site and really like value like custom designs. We're like no theming in craft. We don't want to deal with themes. We don't want to attract that sort of audience. We want creatives. You know, we want people who like HTML and CSS and like building out applications and like, you know, pushing the bar on web standards and all that kind of stuff. And so like we were just decided, you know, if that's who we want to go after and if that's who we're building this for, like let's have a name that like really talks to them. So it was picked for that reason. But our company name is Pixel and Tonic, and like the fact that like there's a craft beer reference in there was not missed. And we do like that idea as well. So
yeah, I love that there's no themes and there's no extra code that's injected into your site like a lot of these CMSs.
Yeah, no, not a single character gets added that you didn't type yourself.
Yeah, there's so much value to that.
Yeah.
So there's no loop where I have to then reverse the loop and reload the loop elsewhere. So I don't have to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what are some of the common requests that you're getting for craft? Maybe things that you were asked about in version 2 that you guys have implemented in the new version.
Well, probably the two biggest ones. Well, the plugin store is the biggest one. So there wasn't a plugin store, so there was no central place to find all the great stuff that that Craft plugin developers have been making. So version 3 has a built-in plugin store, and you can register and distribute plugins for free or sell your plugins directly inside Craft. And that was something that had been asked for quite a few years.
Since day one.
Yeah, pretty much since day one. The other big thing too that we saw a lot was the request to have multi-site. So Craft 2 has, like a lot of Craft success comes from having built-in localization. Like the reason we're having our conference in Berlin is because more than 1/3 of our customers are in Europe, partly because localization is just a core feature. So people in version 2 were hacking localization to do multi-site. And so we decided, let's not make that a hack. And Bren and the dev team kind of built that out into a standard feature that you can do some really fun stuff with. And then it's just, I don't know if you would call PHP 7 a feature request, but the end result.
The general speed improvements have definitely been. I mean, that's not really something people were asking for. Like previous versions of Craft have always been I don't know, like on par with similar systems. But we learned a lot in the process of working on versions 1 and 2 about how to make faster PHP applications, and decided to go all in on that on version 3, and so end up with something that's between 2 and 3 times faster depending on what you're doing. So that's been like a very pleasant surprise by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we back up just a quick moment, because we talked about the multi-site, and I just, for people that don't understand what that's used for, or if like you're talking about, a lot of the a third of your customers you cited are overseas. So, and what exactly is the value of the multi-site?
So localization has always been a core feature of Craft. We started, before we even started working on it, we already had a lot of international customers from our previous business, and we developed a lot of relationships with them, and had always been listening to all of their frustrations with how internationalization worked with Expression Engine. And that was actually one of the things that we tried to make a nice plugin for in Expression Engine, and just wrestled with it too much to the point where we decided to give up. But that like gave us the foresight that like we really need to make that a first-class citizen in Craft. And so it's always been really good at that. We've iterated on it, 50 times. Like we're constantly getting feedback, realizing we're overlooking something or whatever. So the actual implementation we have right now is probably like the 5th rewrite around. But we came up with something by version 2 that we were really happy with, that everyone was really happy with, as far as internationalization goes. And it was so good at internationalization that people started hacking it to basically run multiple same language sites on the single installation, which was not what it was intended for. But it turns out that it worked out pretty well, and there were a lot of use cases where people needed to have 2 different sister sites running, but they wanted one single set of users, or there was some content that needed to be shared between the 2. And these were all things that you could do as long as both of those sites had 2 different languages. And so what they did is they started making up languages. Like instead of calling both of them English, because you couldn't do that, you call one like English 1 and English 2. And then on the front end, like you get this like amazing multi-site system where you had like exactly the implementation they were hoping for. It was just a little hacky to get there. And so basically, like instead of fighting that, like we, as that technique became more popularized, then the fact that it was hacky started becoming more of an issue, and more people were requesting a better implementation. And we just decided, rather than fight this, let's just go for it. Let's go all in.
Embrace.
So we basically, we embraced it. So we rewrote localization again, this time not so set on every locale being a language-based identifier. Like now it's just sites, and those sites have languages, but you can have 2 sites that have the same language. It's kind of the same feature set as you got in Craft 2, but it's much better for what people actually wanted to use it for. So.
The other thing you talked about was the plugin store that people were requesting. So what does that look like? Is it something to where I would think about the WordPress plugins being like can anybody just submit stuff and get it approved and have it on there?
Clearly better, Frederick. Come on, geez.
Obviously, it's better. Yeah. By far.
The WordPress one, I've never seen it, but
I have.
Yeah.
I never even heard of it. So
Good answer.
Yeah, it's kind of like the iOS App Store, things like that. People can create a developer account with us and sign up to be considered a plugin developer, which is just something you toggle.
really?
You don't have to pay us anything. You don't have to go through an approval process to be that.
nice.
But once you are, then you get the features for manage. Connect to your GitHub account, select a plugin, submit it, categorize it, write a description, all that kind of stuff, and then you submit for approval. We have a very quick approval process that basically makes sure that you're using the correct license. You need it to be either MIT licensed or use our own custom proprietary Craft license. Make sure that you've got reasonable price points if you're going to sell it. Just simple checks like that, just a sanity check basically, and then it's on there. And again, like if you're familiar with how Composer works, it's all kind of built on top of Composer. So releasing new versions is as simple as like tagging a release and pushing it to GitHub, and everything just kind of happens automatically. So it's pretty nice.
So do you all run the payment gateway and everything as well?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. That part's not running on Composer, but we do. We have like our own. So we actually have a central Craft installation that's running our own e-commerce product called Craft Commerce. And then that has an API that all of the Craft installations talk to in order to go through this like multi-step payment system and, defining the cart, paying for the cart, all that stuff.
Cool.
Yep. And then we pay out developers pretty close to instantly. So as soon as they sell a plugin, we're sending them payment to Stripe. I would say it's got a much nicer design than the WordPress store. Just have to say it because it's true. The type of terms that we have, and I think because again, it makes a real difference that Craft is aimed again, like we're assuming a professional is building out websites for professionals to use. Mm-hmm. So the type and quality of plugins tend to be really different. You don't have like a sea of upsell plugins, and that's something that we specifically prevent. You can't, create a super feature limited plugin, and every time you use the plugin, you're getting some sort of banner to go buy, like the $100 a month service. We want to have like
pro today.
We all,
but yeah, it's like we try to cut out a lot of that nonsense in terms of how it works and the terms that we have for the types of plugins and how they need to be presented are much more professional in nature. We think so. I don't know. I like it a lot better. Having used the WordPress store for a number of years and then having one in there. In Craft is really nice.
I have a sort of a hot drama-y question. I'm curious how you guys will answer this. In the current market, you see a trend towards certain technologies. I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. What do you feel about the fact that your core infrastructure is PHP, and how do you respond to someone who's like, I don't know if I want to use that because it's PHP?
They're welcome to not use it. We don't want to support them either, so it works out.
Well,
the very pragmatic answer is that it is still the most universal tech stack on web hosts. So as long as Craft is primarily self-hosted, there isn't really another viable choice. So, like, there are some very good arguments to make for PHP versus whatever it is, other options.
Jekyll or something.
But so long as you need an environment that's accepted by a wide range of customers and is well supported, not just from us, but from the people who actually make the hosting environments and all the hosting control panels, then there really isn't a viable alternative yet.
And let's face it, one of the greatest ironies on Twitter is PHP developers making fun of JavaScript developers and JavaScript developers making fun of PHP. I just get a kick out of that all day long because it's ironic.
Yeah. In my opinion, has always been, if it works, like what's wrong? Like it works.
Yeah, we weren't thrilled to write a CMS on PHP. I wouldn't be thrilled to write one in JavaScript either. I'm sure there's Golang or something like that would be more fun to do, but then like no one's going to use it because no one knows how to set that up on their end. PHP to its credit, has been rapidly increasing or improving over the years. Like when we started working on Craft, I think it was PHP 5.4 might have been on the horizon, and now we're at 7.2, and like the jump from 5 to 7 was huge. 7.1 is huge. 7.2 is huge. Like they've been killing it. And,
the performance is crazy.
And the performance is getting way better. And I think a lot of that was heavily inspired by Facebook's contributions to their hack and whatever their sort of HHVM. I think they kind of taught the PHP community quite a bit in that process and leveled them up a bit. But then, like, in addition to the PHP, the language, the community has been amazingly, awesome too. Like they've been producing standards. Like there's all these standards now that didn't exist on like how to make things that didn't exist when we started Craft. So a big part of Craft 3 was like, let's adopt all these standards, and that was a project in and of itself. But the end result is like now it's so much easier to be interoperable with like other systems, and like everything about the ecosystem has gotten so much better in the last few years, which is encouraging. It's like it might not be great, it might not be the perfect language. There's very little like logical consistency in the internals of PHP, but in terms of like what you can actually build with it, and like in terms of like your actual day-to-day exposure to it, it's getting pretty pleasant.
Yeah, it's not like it's Cold Fusion or something.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was interesting too, and I started reading about this framework. This is something that I didn't know about, this Yi framework.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us why you've gone to this?
We did a pretty extensive phase of like looking into the different options when we started, and it was the one that seemed the most natural to us as we started playing around with it. The landscape was different back then. Like if we had to rewrite it today and Yi didn't exist, I would be much more happy to write it on Symfony components than I would have been, 7 years ago. Like Symfony is like become much less monolithic thanks to like splitting things out into components. There's also Laravel now. That was, a speckle in Taylor Otwell's eye when we started, so that wasn't an option. And like we get asked a lot, like, why didn't you write Craft on Laravel? Because that's kind of the hotness lately in PHP land. And besides the obvious of like, well, it wasn't an option when we started.
It didn't exist.
Yeah,
It didn't exist.
exactly.
We did have the option to move it to Laravel in Craft 3. Because Craft 3, in addition to all of our own internal improvements, we were moving to Yi 2.0, which was a complete rewrite, which was going to require us to do a complete rewrite. And so there was that like opportunity of like, if we're going to rewrite it anyways, should we consider switching to something else? And as much as like I like Laravel, I think that Taylor's doing some really cool stuff with it. I think for something on the scale of Craft, you need something that moves a little slower. You need something that's a little bit more of a steady, dependable, and predictable pace. And so I would still be hesitant to consider Laravel for something in the scope of Craft today. And that's not a knock against Laravel, because like we're all about like move fast and break things. But in terms of like building and supporting this gigantic monolithic application that you're going to be supporting for the next 20 years, it's probably better to go with the slow and steady option.
Yeah, and you need something reliable. And that's the thing I always talk about, going back to sort of what we were talking about before, kind of looping both together, is that all these technologies, new, exciting, yay, but these other technologies, they've worked. It's like that cake recipe that's been passed down to your family for a while. It's fantastic. Oh, there's this other recipe, but this one's really good and it's delicious. Yeah. They always like it at Thanksgiving. So yeah, I understand that completely.
I like that you have a thing for cake.
That's all he ever talks about is cake.
Well, my partner, she's a baker. She has her own bakery. So it's hard for me not to mention baking or anything.
That's true.
Like that.
You are in the cake business. I didn't really think about that.
Speaking of Brian and taste, I just have to point out that Brian is probably the most thunderous of nerds right now, wearing a Black Rebel motorcycle.
Oh, thank you for noticing that. Yes.
You're my favorite person at this very moment.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw them last year. They were fan. Yeah, it was a good show.
So we talked about possibly having you guys give us a little demo, little screen share of some of the cool new things in Craft. Do we think we could do some of that?
I have it set up. If I can share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
All right. Let me figure out how this works again.
All right. Yeah. If you go to the left-hand side, there's a little menu that will pop up and it will say share screen.
All right.
Boom.
So this is my favorite thing about Craft. Oh, yes. Keep me logged in. There we go.
that was.
Yes. My favorite thing about Craft. Okay. So in my experience, just a little background. I've done agency work for years. I've been with Happy Cog. I've been with Vector Media Group. I've worked with Craft a lot. And my favorite thing about it is that there's nothing in this dashboard. This is a fresh install. Absolutely nothing. And if I go to the templates folder here, there's just one index PHP or the one index file. So when you first install it, You just get this nice little information screen that has some links to some resources and stuff.
I love that. I love that background.
Isn't that beautiful?
Who did that?
That was designed by a guy named Paul Burton out of Seattle. He's an illustrator and a friend of ours.
Yeah,
Awesome.
He is very, very good. Love Paul's work.
All right, we'll have to put a link to his website in the show notes. What's his website if we want to get a hold of him?
I think it's oddburton.com.
Yeah, I got it already.
Oh, okay, great.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Sam.
All right. So it starts out that way, but I just switched. I don't know if you saw me while y'all were chatting. I just switched Git branches. And by the way, there is a Happy Logger demo, but this is something that I throw together. I keep a demo like this around because it's a little more wireframe-ish. But now I'm logging back into a state that I have some things actually set up. And so if I click over to entries, I can see all my entries here. If I go back to the home page, you can see that I have a couple modules already set up here. So I don't want to go ahead and stop me with any questions. I'm just going to blaze through a couple key concepts here.
Oh, we'll be happy to stop you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Great. Let's see. If we look at the homepage, one thing that I really like about Craft from a developer's point of view is that you create your fields, and Craft comes with a bunch of custom fields already supplied for you. So like in WordPress, you have to purchase advanced custom fields. You don't have to do that here. If I'm creating a new field, these are all stock, except for 2 or 3 of these. These are all stock fields. Actually, 3 or 4 of these are all stock fields. So you have a bunch of custom fields available to you already when you go ahead and create fields. And then when you create a section, like for instance, the homepage is actually a section in Craft nomenclature here. You can just use this. Let me go over to the entry type. And here's some fields that I haven't used yet. And you can just drag and drop the fields onto the tabs where you want them to appear. So that helps you create a really nice authoring experience. In fact, I've had at least on 3, maybe 4 projects where I've sent a link to the client to log in early before we actually had the meeting where I would go through training with them. And probably 3 out of 4 of those, once we got to the meeting where I was supposed to train them, they were like, "No, we're good. We totally get it." So this is the homepage that we have there. But here's an example of like a header. This is a really common thing to have, just like a subheading call to action and a background image.
I think we're getting some of the echo in the background in the office where we keep switching the screen away from Sam.
It will be what Sam does his thing.
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, great. So I have 2 things in here. I have this big header, and it's all the usual suspects here. But now this context switching can be a little difficult sometimes. So what Craft offers is an awesome live preview. And as I'm going through this, like I could swap out that image. Let's go ahead and choose a different cover image and choose, how about this bird right there? And as I'm editing it, I can see the changes happen over there. Now that text really isn't popping out, so maybe we want an overlay. I'll choose this Hazel overlay.
And right now for our audio listeners, he's showing us the admin interface with a live preview on one side, and he's kind of updating the visual components of the live preview. Check out the video to see everything.
Awesome.
I know my dog's barking.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. So yeah, if I sorry for everybody on audio, but anyway, I have one field that I've created called content modules, and let me just show you what a matrix field looks like. I'm going to abandon this entry right here, and I'm going to go to fields. And what I like to do now, every developer has their own way of doing things, but a lot of people like to use this matrix field as a content builder where you can have like a rich text, image, embed, and carousel. And the reason that you want to do these, now here's one thing that's difficult for end clients or end users to wrap their head around, because they're so used to WordPress or other CMSs where there's just one WYSIWYG field and you put all of your images in it. The problem with that is, especially with the images, is that makes it very difficult to implement responsive web design concerns. So it's nice to have individual blocks and images in their own blocks so that they can have their own template. And so this is what a matrix field definition looks like. And then the way it's implemented in the actual templates is I prefer, this is my personal thing, I prefer to have all of my blocks, and each of those blocks has their own template. So it's very, each one is its own component. And so that's just a little background, some nerdy background on how you actually make a matrix block, but the way that actually pans out then in the entry.
And I just want to interject. It looks like it's really easy to add your own templates for these blocks, where in some CMSs it's not. I don't want to mention Drupal, but I did. Sometimes it could be a little bit more difficult to do something like this, and this looks very straightforward.
Oh, absolutely. If I ever hear the words render pipeline again, I think I'm going to just scream. Here's an example from the. I usually just have a file here called content modules that I'll include elsewhere. But what's nice is that the twig include syntax I'm just saying whatever that block handle is. So these templates are named exactly like the blocks in the CMS, which is really nice to keep your sanity around it. And again, so this is the content modules, and I already have some text in here. I have an image. I created a carousel simply by tossing a bunch of images in there and some embed code that just spits out raw. Now, what's hard, again, with your content creators that are used to one WYSIWYG is that this is hard to envision what it's going to look like, and that's why Live Preview is now the new monster WYSIWYG, and just makes it a real joy.
I really like the SEO stuff. Is that part of the pre-build, or is that something?
Well,
additional?
this is a paid plugin, and it's worth every penny. It looks
nice. It's a live preview for our audio listeners. Actually gives you a live preview of how your Google search results or sharing a link would look. It's really pretty awesome.
Yes, this is by Andrew Welch. It's a very popular, and I would call it a must-have. From experience, I've chosen an image here to choose for the Twitter cards and things. There was something I wanted to mention. So the live preview is the new WYSIWYG. And I would like to demonstrate, I know we're getting close to time here. The one thing I want to show off is the assets. I think this is really cool. Actually, let's go back here, and I'm going to choose an image for our SEO image over here. So I'll take away this SEO image, and I'm going to select an image that might not normally work out very well. So I selected an image that is a picture of a canyon, and it has a man on a cliff clear over to the left. And so I'm going to save and continue editing. And now it will update our Twitter cards. But you see how in this small card, he's obviously clipped off over here to the left. And that's a problem. Now the wide picture, he's still in there, and that actually looks framed really well. Well, what we can do is go over to assets. Actually, I could have probably just done this from the entry, but I'm going to go click on this asset, and there's this focal point, and I'm going to drag it right over on his face, and I'll save it. And now when Craft crops the image, and I've decided, it's up to me as a developer to say in the templates that this image should be cropped and how. Let's go back to that entry to the homepage. And when we look at that small image, what Craft will do when it goes to crop it is make that center point the focal point of the image as much as possible. Now, it's kind of hard to see, obviously, but where my mouse is, he's as much in frame as can possibly be for this square image right there. And that will happen across the site.
Wow, and that comes out of the box like that, or was that a plugin?
That's out of the box.
Wow, that's really nice. It's really difficult to do something like that in Drupal, where you'd have to, and excuse me for keep citing it because some of the things make me think of it, but you'll have to install a plugin. You have to do some certain kind of image styling to do something like that to select it. But this is just out of the box. There you go. That's amazing. So for our audio listeners, all he did was just say where that focal point is, and then it just assigned it to it and that's what showed within that little square box for the Twitter card.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're short on time. I just want to show you a couple more things. So I like to show off SEO-matic as a personal thing. Freeform is a fantastic plugin. It's not the only form builder plugin, but it's within here that I created a drag and drop contact form. And it shows up here. And if I were to submit this, all of the submissions stay in the dashboard here. So you can configure it and see your submissions in here, set up email things. That's usually an important feature. The last thing I'd like to show you before asking if you have any more questions is just what the plugin store looks like.
Yeah, this was going to be one of my questions. So
yeah, this is just so nice to have. And there's some curated lists here, some recently added, what we would consider some must-haves. Especially, so SEO-matic has actually, I was working at a startup last year, and SEO-matic gave us tremendous results. FeedMe is a big one for if you're concerned about importing content, say from WordPress, your old WordPress site into Craft. Supertable is a really popular one. But yeah, it's just really nice to be able to purchase this. So, and here's the last thing I'll say is that something like SEO-matic, what's one that is a paid one? Okay, so GraphQL. This is a great plugin if you want to do GraphQL with Craft. And if I wanted to install it, say it's $59, but I'm just using a pro trial, so the trial extends to the plugins as well. So I can click this button that says try, and now I can use it all I want as long as I'm in a local or a non-public state environment. So since my URL here says .local, I can install any paid plugin that I want and play with it as much as I want before deciding to actually use it.
That's super nice. It's not going to expire. It's just as long as it's on the local.
Yep. And this is going to take quite a bit of time here to
yeah, we'll go back to that.
But that's why I saved that for last. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you know, the only other thing, if we could just look at it really quick, was the multi-site. Point
oh yeah.
Yeah, that was another one of the big advantages with this new version.
Well, tell you what, I'm going to refresh the page.
Yeah, maybe we could just go out one.
Just in case. Well, because it's installing, I don't know, Brandon, is this going to...
You should be able to open up a new tab.
Okay, let's just do that then. And...
I love that you're using Opera too.
Oh, yeah, it's my clean. You know, Opera is basically just Chrome.
Yeah. Now.
You know what? It's hanging up on me. So actually, I do have another. Let me find another Craft free.local admin.
Live demos.
Live. I know. I'm not sure what's in here. This is. I use this particular local thing for support requests and. Oh, actually, okay, so it loaded up. GraphQL should be installed now. So I'll go back to this original one. If we go to settings and sites, here's where you can set up new sites. So if I wanted to set up a new site, well, let me back up here. I like to click really fast. This obviously is default to English US. It's the primary site. And I could add another site here if I wanted it to be, or for another locale or even just an alternate site. So let's say Japanese.local. Oh no, that's the name. But you get where this is going, right?
Yeah, and he just clicked a button that said new site, and he's filling out the form, and magically he'll have a whole nother site.
Yeah. So somewhere in here, well, I'm not going to be too correct here. Is it the primary site? No. Does it have its own base URL? Sure. And then we'll just save it.
Now, does that URL have to be off of I guess it would have to be off the actual host of where the site is. So it's not like a cross-domain type setup, or can you do that?
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the license extends to, it has to be running on the same servers. Isn't that right, Leslie or Brandon?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, as long as it's running on the same version of Craft, we don't care what URLs you use. very, very liberal licensing.
Cool.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for the demo. That's great.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you're excited about it too. You have an energy about you as you're showing it. You're like, this is so cool. Look at this, guys.
It is really cool. I mean, 5 years ago, I was working at HappyCog, and I might have been one of the first people to gush about it on the HappyCog blog. I mean, it was Craft 1.0, and I was just blown away. And I had come from Expression Engine, used Matrix, but to see a content management system that was so enjoyable to use, that was built kind of around Matrix, all those things, like I'm one of the benefactors of this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I love that. Well, hey, we are just about out of time, guys. I was wondering if you all have some kind of words of advice or anything that you would like to get out there about craft that people might not know. Any kind of thoughts on version 3, things that you just want to tell the public about craft?
A knowledge bomb.
Boom.
I think for me, one of the things in Craft 3 that was a significant change is the license. So the Craft 2 license had a lot of legalese in it, and with the Craft 3 license, we worked very hard to get that where it's as close to open source as we can get it without going out of business. And we did that because we really wanted the experience of working with Craft to be like a normal open source workflow. Everything's on GitHub. We require all the plugins in the store to be on public GitHub repos. So you have full access to the code. And that impacts in a positive way everything from development to deployment, how you think about it, and I like to think it shows kind of the ethos of our company. We want to be a product company, which is why we charge money for it, but we love open source and have tried to align ourselves as closely as we can with it, while still being able to pay our mortgages.
That makes sense. What about you, boss, back there? What do you think? You got any kind of knowledge bombs you want to drop on it?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that we haven't gone over. The license is a good one. I'd just say, if you've never heard of Craft and you're interested in trying it, like, the biggest thing I can encourage you to do is get involved in the community. We've got a Slack group with almost 7,000 people in it, and everyone is super helpful. Like, we've got some of the most helpful and nice people you've ever met, and like they have like no end to their patience when new people come in and have newbie questions and all that kind of stuff. And so if you're considering Craft, first thing you should do is get in the Slack group and start meeting some people and learn all you can from them, because there's a lot of great knowledge in there.
Yeah, that's some great advice. All right, well, great. Well, hey, guys, thank you again for joining us, and super appreciate it. And I think we all picked up some really cool things about Craft.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.